Welcome to Revenge Fruit. Before I tell you what I said to my mother, right before I walked out of that restaurant, and why, 3 weeks later, she was sitting on my doorstep crying, let me ask you something first. What time is it where you are right now, and where are you watching from? Drop it in the comments. I read every single one. Now, let me tell you what happened at my father's 60th birthday dinner. My father put a folder on the table in front of me. A actual manila folder, with a typed document inside. My brother was sitting across from me, not looking at my face. My mother had her hands folded like she was in church. 31 relatives were watching. And my father slid that folder across the white tablecloth, tapped it twice with 2 fingers, and said, "You sign this tonight, or you stop being part of this family." The document was a promissory note. For $47,000. To buy my brother a house. I had not been asked. I had not been consulted. I found out the same moment everyone else in that room did, except everyone else in that room had apparently already been told I would say yes. That was 63 days ago. I want to tell you everything. My name is not important. What matters is that I am 31 years old. I have a master's degree in civil engineering. I bought my own condo at 28, and for my entire adult life, I have been the person my family called when something went wrong. Not my brother. Me. My brother is 26. His name doesn't matter either, so I'll just call him my brother. He has never held a job for more than 8 months. He has borrowed money from my parents, from my aunt, from my grandmother before she passed. He is charming and funny, and everyone in my family adores him the way you adore a golden retriever that keeps chewing the furniture with exasperation, yes, but mostly with a kind of delighted helplessness. I love my brother. I want to say that clearly before I say anything else, because this story is not about hating him. This story is about what my family decided I owed him, and what happened when I disagreed. I grew up understanding, without anyone saying it out loud, that I was the responsible one. My parents are immigrants. They worked extremely hard, and they sacrificed a great deal, and I am genuinely grateful for everything they gave me. But somewhere along the way, my success became a family resource. My salary was discussed at dinner tables I wasn't sitting at. My savings were referenced in conversations I found out about later. When my brother needed a cosigner for a car loan 3 years ago, my mother called me and said, "You're his sister. This is what family does." I co-signed. When my parents needed a new roof 2 years ago and were short $4,000, I covered it. I didn't ask for anything back. I didn't keep a ledger. I helped because they were my family and because it felt like the right thing to do. I did not understand, until that dinner, that I had been slowly trained to believe that my money was not entirely mine. The birthday dinner was at a restaurant my mother chose. Nice place, the kind with cloth napkins and a prix-fixe menu. I drove 40 minutes to get there. I brought my father a card and a bottle of wine I knew he liked. I hugged everyone at the table. I sat down next to my aunt, and across from my brother, and I was genuinely happy to be there. My father was turning 60. I had no idea what was coming. We were between the salad course and the entree when my father stood up. I thought he was going to give a speech. He does this. He loves a captive audience. Always has. He thanked everyone for coming. He said some things about getting older. And then he said, "I want to take care of something tonight that has been on my heart for a long time." He sat back down. He picked up the folder that had been sitting beside his plate the entire time I had assumed it was a menu, or nothing. He placed it in front of me. "Your brother needs a foundation," my father said. "He needs a home. You have been blessed. You know how to manage money. We are asking you to help him the way this family has always helped each other." I opened the folder. The document was 2 pages, printed, with a signature line at the bottom. It outlined a payment of $47,000, structured as a family loan with no interest and no repayment timeline. There was a line at the top that said my name, pre-filled, in bold. I read it twice. The table was very quiet. I looked at my mother. She gave me a small nod, the kind that means this is already decided. Please don't make a scene. I looked at my brother. He was looking at the tablecloth. I looked at my father. He was looking at me with the expression he has always used when he believes he is being reasonable. I said, When did you decide this? My mother said, "We have been talking about it for months. Your brother found a property. It's a good investment. We need to move quickly. And you decided that I would be the one to pay for it. We decided that you are in a position to help." "That's not the same thing," I said. My mother's voice dropped about 10 degrees. "Don't do this here. I want to pause here and tell you something, because I know what some of you are already thinking. You're thinking, why didn't she just say no and leave? And the honest answer is that 31 years of conditioning does not dissolve in 30 seconds. I sat there and I felt something I can only describe as a very old and very heavy weight settle onto my chest, the weight of being the difficult one, the ungrateful one, the one who let the family down. I had felt that weight my entire life. It had made me co-sign loans I shouldn't have co-signed. It had made me write checks I shouldn't have written. It was making me hesitate right now, in a restaurant full of people who were watching me. But something else was happening underneath it. Something that had been building for a long time. I closed the folder. I said, "I'm not signing this." My father said, "Excuse me? I'm not signing it. I was not consulted. I was not asked. You put a legal document in front of me at your birthday dinner in front of 30 people and told me to sign it. I am not signing it." The table erupted. Not loudly, we are a family that argues in controlled tones in public, but everyone started talking at once. My aunt said my name in a warning voice. Two of my cousins exchanged looks. My mother stood up slightly from her chair and said, in a very precise whisper that somehow carried across the entire table, "You are embarrassing this family." My brother finally looked up. He said, "I didn't know it was going to be like this." I believe him, actually. I think he genuinely didn't know the full script. But he also didn't say this is wrong. She shouldn't have to do this. He just looked uncomfortable and went back to looking at the tablecloth, and that silence said everything I needed to hear about who my brother was in that moment. My father said, "We have given you everything. Everything you are because of this family. Your brother needs this. You have the money. What kind of person says no to this?" And that was the sentence. That was the one that did it. Because I had heard variations of that sentence my entire life. What kind of daughter? What kind of sister? What kind of person? It had always worked before. It had always made me shrink and accommodate, and find a way to say yes, so that I could go back to being a good person in their eyes. I stood up. I picked up my purse. I took out 3 $20 bills, and put them on the table for my portion of the meal. And I said, quietly and clearly, "The kind of person who is done." I walked out of the restaurant. I drove home. I did not cry until I was inside my apartment with the door locked, and then I cried for a long time, not because I regretted what I had done, but because of how much I had been carrying without ever knowing the full weight of it. But here is what I need to tell you, because walking out was only the first thing I did that night. The second thing I did was open my laptop. I want to be transparent about something. 2 years before this dinner, I had made my brother a secondary card holder on one of my credit cards. It was for emergencies. That was how it was framed. He had used it occasionally, and I had let it go, partially because the amounts were manageable, and partially because I did not want the confrontation. I had been meaning to remove him for a year. I had not done it. That night, I removed him. I also called my bank and placed a notification flag on my accounts. Not a freeze, just an alert for any unusual activity. I had a reason for this that I will explain in a moment. And then I sent one email to my company's HR department, not to report anything, just to quietly, carefully, document that I was having a family situation, and to ask a procedural question about whether family members could be listed as emergency contacts and then removed. This sounds like a small thing. It was not a small thing. My mother, in the past, had called my workplace once before. Once, 3 years ago, when I had declined to come home for a holiday she felt was important. She had called my office number, not my cell, my office number, and spoken to my assistant and said there was a family emergency. There was no emergency. She wanted me to come home. I am telling you this so you understand that I was not being paranoid. The call started the next morning. My mother called 7 times before 9 a.m. I did not answer. My father called twice. My brother called once, one single time, and left a voicemail that said, "Hey, I just wanted to say I'm sorry it went like that. Call me when you can." I saved that voicemail, not for any strategic reason, just because it was the only one that sounded like a person talking to another person. My aunt called and left a message that was 9 minutes long. I know because my phone showed me the duration before I deleted it. I did not listen to it. By the end of the first week, I had received 42 missed calls from various family members, and one text from a cousin I had not spoken to in 4 years that said simply, "You really hurt Dad." I want to tell you something about that week, because it is important for what comes later. I was not doing well. I want to be honest about that. I was sleeping badly. I was second-guessing myself constantly. I kept replaying the dinner and finding new ways to wonder if I had overreacted, if I had been cruel, if there was something I should have done differently. The weight I described earlier, the weight of being the difficult one, does not lift immediately just because you made the right decision. It stays. It recalibrates slowly. What helped me was writing things down. I started keeping a very plain, factual document on my computer: dates, amounts, events, every loan I had co-signed, every check I had written, every time I had been asked, and every time I had said yes. I was not building a legal case. I was just trying to see clearly. When you write things down without emotion, when you just list the facts, sometimes the picture they form is very different from the picture you have been living inside. The picture I had been living inside was, I am a good daughter and sister who helps her family when she can. The picture the list showed me was, over 7 years, I had given or guaranteed approximately $61,000 to various members of my family, almost none of which had been repaid, and none of which had ever been framed as anything other than my obligation. $61,000. That number sat with me for a long time. In the second week, my mother escalated. She showed up at my building. She did not have the code to my floor, so she couldn't reach my door, but she sat in the lobby for 2 hours on a Tuesday afternoon. My building's front desk called me to ask if I was expecting a visitor. I said no, and I asked them to let her know I was not available. I watched her leave on the lobby camera feed from my phone, and I am not going to pretend that wasn't one of the harder moments of this entire experience. She is my mother. She looked small from that angle. But I thought about the folder. I thought about the pre-filled signature line. I didn't go downstairs. She left a note with the front desk. It said, "We made mistakes, but you are making a bigger one. Family is all you have. Please come home." I kept the note. I keep it to remind myself that manipulation can sound like love. I am not saying my mother doesn't love me. I believe she does, in the way she knows how. But love that comes with a folder and a signature line is love with conditions attached. And I had been meeting those conditions my entire life without ever examining what it was costing me. The thing I hadn't told them, the thing they didn't know yet. I need to explain this now. When I removed my brother from my credit card that first night, I also checked something. I checked the recent transactions. And I found a charge I did not recognize placed 4 days before the birthday dinner at a hardware supply company for $612. My brother had used my card 4 days before the dinner, where my family asked me to pay $47,000 for his house. I cannot prove he knew what the dinner was going to be. I genuinely don't know if he did. But someone in my family had access to my card number because I had been careless, because I had trusted, because that is what I had always done, and that access had been used just days before they sat me down with a legal document. I disputed the charge. The dispute was processed. I got my money back. And then I called a lawyer. Not a family lawyer. Not someone who could negotiate a reconciliation. A straightforward consultation with a financial attorney to understand my exposure, whether the promissory note, even unsigned, created any kind of implied obligation under state law. The answer was no. An unsigned document is not a contract. I paid for that hour of consultation out of my own pocket, and I would pay it again 10 times over for the clarity it gave me. At the end of week 3, I got a call from my brother's girlfriend. I had met her twice. She seemed nice. She called me from her own number, not my brother's, which told me she had thought about whether I would pick up. I did pick up, because I didn't recognize the number. She said, I know you don't know me well. I just want you to know that I didn't know any of this was happening. Marcus, she used my brother's actual name, which I won't repeat here. But she used it. He didn't tell me about the dinner plan until the night before. I told him it was wrong. I want you to know that. I said, thank you for telling me. She said, he's not doing well. I don't mean that as pressure. I just mean he knows this is his fault too. He's not saying that to your parents, but he knows. I appreciated that call more than I can say. Not because it changed my position, but because it reminded me that my brother is a complicated person and not simply a villain in this story. He is someone who has been enabled and who has enabled himself, and who is, I think, beginning to reckon with what that costs everyone around him, including himself. I did not call my brother back after that, but I stopped hoping he would fail. There is one more thing that happened, and it is the thing that changed everything. My father called me on a Thursday evening, 5 weeks after the dinner. I almost didn't answer. I don't know why I did. Maybe I was tired of the weight of not answering, or maybe some part of me knew it was time. I picked up. He did not lead with an apology. My father is not someone who leads with apologies. He said, the house deal fell through. I said, I'm sorry to hear that. He said, the seller accepted another offer. He paused. I wanted you to know. I said, okay. Another pause. And then my father said something I had never heard him say in 31 years. He said, I don't think we handled this well. I sat with that for a moment. I did not rush to fill the silence. He said, your mother and we saw what you had built, and we thought about what your brother needed, and we made a decision without thinking about whether it was right to make it for you. I know that's not enough, but I wanted to say it. I said, it's a start. He said, are you okay? I said, I'm getting there. We did not reconcile that night. We did not hug and cry and announce that everything was fixed. That is not how these things work, and I don't think anyone should expect them to. But it was the first honest conversation my father and I had ever had, and it was made possible entirely by the fact that I had walked out of that restaurant and refused to be managed. I am telling you this because I think there is something important here that gets lost in stories like mine. Everyone wants to hear about the revenge, the karma, the moment the difficult family members get what's coming to them. And there was some of that. The house deal fell through. The money demand collapsed. My parents are in a different and quieter place now. But the part that actually changed me was not any of that. It was the list. It was sitting down and writing out what I had given and what it had cost, and letting myself see it clearly for the first time. I am not no contact with my family. I am in limited contact. I have boundaries that are new and that require maintenance. I have had uncomfortable conversations, and I will have more. The relationship I have with my parents now is smaller and more honest than the relationship I had before, and I think that is, ultimately, better than what we had, which was a large, comfortable lie that required me to keep subsidizing it. My brother and I texted last week. Short messages. Nothing heavy. I don't know yet what our relationship will look like. But he reached out first, which matters. And the charge on my credit card, the $612, I don't know for certain who authorized it, or whether it was deliberate. I got my money back. I left it there, in the facts, without deciding what it means. Sometimes you don't get to know everything. Sometimes you just get to know enough. I want to ask you something before you go. Not about my story, about yours. Because I don't think I am unusual. I think a lot of people watching this have a folder somewhere in their life. Maybe not a literal one. Maybe not a $47,000 ask. But something. A role they've been assigned without being asked. An obligation that was handed to them so early they stopped questioning whether they had chosen it. An amount of money, of time, of energy they have been giving, without ever adding it up. What would happen if you wrote your list? I'm not telling you to walk out of anything. I'm not telling you your situation is the same as mine. I'm just asking, do you actually know what things have cost you? Not what you've been told they cost, what they actually cost. Drop your answer in the comments. I want to know. And if this story is something you needed to hear today, if any part of it sounds like your life, tap the like button and share it with someone who needs it too. We're building something here at Revenge Fruit, and it only works if the right people find it. I'll see you in the next one.